welcome back to my channel. Thanks for watching this if you're watching it. Good news, you guys. Amazing news, actually. I finally finished reading The Food Revolution. It took me months to read, and look how many little tab things I have. It's because I'm doing a school project right now on advocating for consuming less meat. So if you're interested in that, leave me a comment or shoot me an email or message and I can share it with you after I'm done, because it's all about how to convince your community that you should all eat less meat because it's not good for you and it's not good for the environment. And that's kind of what this book does. It kind of goes through GMOs and food and healing and health and animal rights and the food system in America and the environment and world hunger. So this book was written in the 90s, but it's still super relevant today, and to be honest, everything's just gotten worse than what it says in here. So you could still read this and then, like find updated information for the specific things that you're interested in finding out current information for, but I'd still recommend this even though it's old. All these little tabs are for my project with statistics and facts and stuff like that, so let's see if there's a good one to share. This MD, who's also the director of the Framingham Health Study at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, says, quote, "A low-fat, plant-based diet would not only lower the heart attack rate about 85%, but would lower the cancer rate 60%. And then an MD who is the chairman of the nutrition department at Harvard School of Public Health said, quote, "If you step back and look at the data on beef and cancer, the optimum amount of red meat you should eat should be 0. So anyways, if you don't want to change your life and change your diet, don't read this. But if you care about the environment and care about your health, read this. This really will give you concrete reasons why you should switch it up. Also, he writes it definitely not in a way for like scientists to read. This is definitely for normal people to read, so it won't be overwhelming. Also, this is the book that got my friend Jenna to switch to a plant-based diet, which is why I read it when I found it at the thrift store, and I recommend it. I randomly went to the library and saw this on the shelf and just grabbed it when I was looking for books about something else. It's called The 100 Thing Challenge: How I Got Rid of Almost Everything, Remade My Life, and Reimagined My Soul by Dave Bruno. I gave this 2 stars on Goodreads. It's really short and easy and fast to read. It's like just 200 pages, but they're really small pages with not a lot of writing. So it was pretty fast. I read it in like 2 nights. And the reason I gave it a bad review, I thought was like kind of perfectly summed up by someone else on Goodreads who wrote their review. I think it was by someone named Ashley, and she wrote like, "This book is just a guy in San Diego cleaning out all the REI stuff from his garage," which is kind of true. He doesn't really like go extreme actually, and I feel like if you're gonna write a book, you should be kind of extreme, but in his 100 Thing Challenge, he counted his entire library as one thing, and he counted all of his shirts as one thing, and all of his socks as one thing, and all of his underwear as one thing, and I just think that if you're gonna do like the 100 Thing Challenge, you should really just have 100 things, so he was kind of like a cheater. But also, that's fine, he gets to like define his own rules, but then like, is it really worthwhile to write a book about it? Because I could be like, oh, my yoga stuff is all like one thing, but actually it's like 50 things. Actually more, because I have like 40 yoga pants. So the point is, just not that good. And a second reason I didn't really like it, already over a minute, I'm not good at this, is that he's super Christian, which isn't like bad in and of itself, but he just is super weird. Like, there's so many moments in the book where he's like way over the top in that regards. Like, he talks about how he goes solo camping one night, and there's a woman also solo camping like nearby him, kind of on the campgrounds, and he says like, "I was nervous immediately when it was like me alone and her alone, because anything that even smells at least a little bit like infidelity like really makes me scared." And it's like, dude, holy shit, you can't be alone with a woman. It's like total Mike Pence shit up in here. Didn't like that, didn't really like him. The book itself is fine, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. So another book that was kind of random, but it was my June 2017 Book of the Month Club pick, which I haven't really been keeping up with at all month to month, but if you're interested in a book club or a book service where you just pay like $10 and get a brand new hardcover new release of your choice out of like 5 choices, I will put a link to my video that I made about it, and I'll put a link below that also has a discount code for you. Chemistry, a novel by Weike Wang. I really, really loved this book the entire time, literally until the last paragraph, which is so disappointing because it's like, it's pretty short and easy and fast in the way it's written. It's all written in the first person perspective, and it's very like non-traditional, almost like poetry, but it's not poetry. And in little sections instead of chapters, so it's like very fast to get through. So basically it's about a PhD student. You never even learn anyone's name except for her boyfriend, and it basically is about how she's like trying to get her chemistry PhD, and it's like the pressure that her parents have put on her because they immigrated from China to the US and they have like really high standards for her, and it's also about like her, yeah, just relationship and self and like finding herself, I guess. But like I said, I really, really liked it except for the last paragraph. I'm just trying to like pull it up. I'm not going to read it. Don't worry, no spoilers. Literally the last sentence. Like I loved the whole book except for the last sentence because the last sentence kind of like gives you the clue of what's going to happen after the book ends. And I just think she made the wrong decision, personally. I still really liked this book. But it was super disappointing. I'm gonna have to give it 3 stars because all the good stuff was canceled out by the terrible ending. I'd still recommend it, and you can make your own decision about what you thought of the ending. Actually, if you've read it, I wanna know what you think because I don't know anyone else who's read it yet since it's a brand new book. Hey, I've been watching a lot of minimalism videos and listening to podcasts, so I got rid of my tripod. So now we're filming on the phone again. But I wanted to tell you about the 2 books I just finished reading. The first one's called Great Tide Rising by Kathleen Dean Moore. And its subtitle is Towards Clarity and Moral Courage in a Time of Planetary Change. And I really, really loved this book. Sometimes it got a little repetitive, and sometimes I thought it was like a little bit too emotional, which I don't even want to say about it because climate change is emotional and ruining our planet should be emotional. But I guess she like used the word despair a lot, and I understand because when you start to really sit down and think about our impact and what's happening with the planet, it's depressing and you can definitely feel despair, so I get it. But sometimes I feel like being dramatic makes your point less salient, I guess. I don't want to say that she was being dramatic, but her writing is really beautiful, which is one of the reasons I liked this book. Like, she's kind of a nature writer and a philosopher, which was a really interesting combination to read. But yeah, I guess just like the amount of emotion in it, I almost wanted something like more practical, but that's not what this book is. So if you want like a practical book about what to do about climate change, this is not the book for you. If you want like a moral and philosophical book about climate change, this book is awesome. And I marked a section that I wanted to read for you guys, and it's funny that I marked this section that I liked because it is the most practical piece of advice probably that she gave. But she talks a lot about like what's happening with the planet and like what our moral obligations are, and she talks a lot about arguments that people make for taking action or not taking action, and she kind of like goes through and points out all of the like fallacies in the arguments and stuff like that. It's just really good if you like philosophy and if you like nature. Here's a really powerful passage that I thought, you know, kind of showed her writing style really well that I really liked. So what do you do when the reality is so far from the ideal? You call your government to account. A single voice is, of course, a thin thread. A chorus of voices, however, is a movement. Here's what I say. Put your elected representatives on speed dial. Hometown, state capital, Washington, D.C. Give those sullen, frightened folks some spine. They know what's right. They know what's wrong. Business as usual is suddenly immoral. Dumb is unforgivable. Delay is unconscionable. Selling out your constituents is monstrous. If big oil has soaked congressional representatives in natural gas and oil dollars, then it's up to us to hold their feet to the fire. In a gerrymandered, corporate-sponsored, dark-moneyed plutocracy, I'm not sure how much meaning is left in elections. Nonetheless, I vote faithfully and campaign for candidates I trust. But there's an additional way to take a stand, and that is to, well, take a stand. Again and again, history changed course when people in large numbers took to the street and stood up to be counted. Maybe that's a better way to vote. So good. Also, it's notable to say that this was written and published before the election in November 2016. I would love to find out if Kathleen Dean Moore has written anything since the election, and I feel bad. Her despair must be through the roof right now, as it is for all of us who care about the environment. But anyways, this book is really good if you are just kind of feeling like generally anxious about climate change and the state of our world right now, the planet and nature and the environment. And I do highly recommend it. So 4 stars out of 5. For my book club, someone in the club picked out our read for this month, and it was Boy Snow Bird, a novel by Helen Oyeyemi. Our one criteria is books by women because I started the club and that's my goal this year. So I got to be a little bit of a dictator on that one. But I never, ever, ever would have picked out this book to read. But I really liked it a lot, so I'm happy that my friend picked it out. It's fiction. It's kind of magical realism, kind of retelling of a fairy tale, but neither of those, it's not like super either of those. It's fiction with like a little magical realism and a little bit of fairy tale thrown in. So Boy is the main character, Snow is another main character, and Bird is another main character. Boy is, she eventually becomes a stepmom to Snow, and then she has her own daughter Bird. and I don't want to like talk too much about it, but basically I really liked it because the story dealt with so many issues. It dealt with race, it dealt with sex and gender, it dealt with abuse, it dealt with marriage, it dealt with parenting, it dealt with identity. It just had so many interesting things that it thought about and discussed, and I'm really looking forward to talking to my book club about it and getting their interpretation. But one thing I liked about it is that even though it kind of like encompassed all of those issues, it didn't feel like she was trying really hard, like, oh, and let's put this in there, and let's put that in there. It didn't feel like that at all. It was very natural and it flowed. Even though I just said it flowed, one thing I didn't like about it is that like the plot doesn't really like flow very well. It's like starts in the 50s and then it like jumps forward to the 70s, and there's 3 sections, and the first section is like half the book, and the second section is like almost the whole second half, and then the third section is just really short, but she drops a bomb at the end, and I think it really worked, and I liked it a lot actually. And even though it kind of ends open-ended, I liked the ending a lot. And her writing is just so powerful and so good, and she just includes so much. There's so many subtleties, there's so much like double meaning in everything she writes. Everything seems very, very thoughtful and like really thought out and really intentional, which I really liked. Maybe I'll do like a short follow-up about this book after I talk to my book club about it and see if there's anything that I missed that they picked up on to share with you. One thing I didn't love was that there was a pretty long section where two of the main characters are like writing letters to each other, and just personally, this is such a personal preference thing, but I don't really like reading like letters from characters to other people, and it went on for like 30 pages or 40 pages, so I just personally found that kind of annoying and like disruptive to the story. But that's a total personal preference thing, and if you don't like that either, I would say you should still read this book if it sounds interesting to you. It's not like enough to turn you off, and the letters and the writing are still really good. It's just something that I don't like personally in terms of like the format. But yeah, I highly recommend the book. It was really good. I probably won't read her other books just because it's so different from any book that I would normally read. Just like contemporary fiction that's not plot driven is just like not my genre for some reason. But I'm happy to be in a book club where other people are picking out the books that we should read, so that I get exposed to stuff like this that turns out to be really good that I wouldn't have picked out on my own. She's sleeping right next to me. You can't see in the frame, but she's so cute. Look how cozy she looks. She's like, whatevs, I don't care about you at all.